Okay, it's 6. We'll start, guys. So, firstly, good evening. Welcome back. Welcome back to your own channel, Scholars. And I'm hoping everybody had a good day today. Yeah. So, okay, welcome back. A couple of you are already here, but we'll just give it a couple of minutes for other people to join as well. In the meantime, without waiting, we'll just go ahead with the introductions, right? So as most of y'all know, my name is Nikitha and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel, and I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th. Yeah, it's a Thursday today and therefore it's a class for standard 11th. And regarding the Telegram Scholars channel, if y'all haven't joined it already, I highly urge y'all to go join the channel, and the link for that is in the description below of this video. So please go check it out and join, because it's really helpful in terms of you getting updates as to what is happening on the YouTube channel, right? If there are any postponing of classes or cancellation of classes or any other quick updates, all of them will be given on this Telegram channel. So go join that. And quick update regarding the combat scholarship test conducted by Unacademy. So this happens for standard 9th and 11th, and basically it's applicable to you. Again, the link is in the description below. Go check out all the details and enroll yourselves. The test happens every week, right? There's a possibility that y'all can win scholarships worth 1 crore, and apart from that, the questionnaire is as such that you will be given 45 minutes to answer 30 questions. And also these tests are available in both Hindi and English, so that's like a language advantage. And finally, you can take these tests live if you have an Android device. Yeah. So quickly moving on to a couple of Unacademy Plus features and iconic features. So starting off with Plus, there are n number of them, but just to name a few, you can actually sit at your own houses and listen to some of the live classes taught by top educators of India, all of which are available on one single platform, which is Unacademy Plus. And there's unlimited access to all these courses, irrespective of which discipline or subject it's from. And there are regular doubt clearing sessions, regular answer writing sessions. Along with that, there is also provision for practice tests and live test series. And every educator at Unacademy Plus, they make sure that they are covering the syllabus in a very exhaustive manner, so that way all are sorted. And there's mentorship given to you, there's guidance given to you, along with access to study materials which are in the form of PDF. Basically, you can have like a quick revision just before your exams, right? So that way it's helpful. And as far as the pricing is concerned for Unacademy Plus, there are 6 ranges, like 6 types. So the first one is it's a 3-month subscription. Then there's 9, then there's 12, 15, 18 and 24, and the prices are up here. Have a look at them and go ahead with whichever one you feel comfortable. Quickly moving on to Iconic, here the features are even better and greater than Plus, as in there's personal mentorship given to you, there are live doubt solving sessions, there are weekly reports, direct parent connect, along with provision for study planners. So again, it will make your job much easier. But the pricing here might change a little bit when compared to Unacademy Plus, like it might increase a bit, but the durations are the same. It's the same 6 durations you have: 3, 9, 12, 15, 18 and 24 months. So have a quick look at them and go ahead, right? And lastly, before actually moving on to the actual content for today, let me just tell you that there is some kind of special content which you can unlock by following the particular steps, right? Firstly, you need to download the Unacademy Learning app on your mobile phone using the Google Play Store, and then log into the app, right? Proper credentials, and then select your goal, which is 11th standard, in particular history, as far as this subject is concerned. And also in the menu button on the top left corner, select the option special. It will ask you for a code. You can use this code, which is TUM10, yeah, and then you will basically able to access special content, right? So that's the update. Okay, cool. Before starting, okay, good evening everyone who just joined. Alia is here with us. Good evening, Alia. Okay, I'm pretty sure everybody must have joined by now. So we'll quickly start without any further ado. So we're still in chapter 4. It's titled as Central Islamic Lands, right? We've already dealt with 3 sessions of it. Today is the 4th session where we'll be dealing especially with 2 topics, right? The first one is breaking of the caliphate and the rise of sultanates, right? Which apparently many of you find it very difficult. You'll ask me to stress more on it. So we'll talk about this in very much detail today, right? And the second topic which we'll be covering is crusades. Yeah, I'm not sure if we can complete it because of time restrictions obviously, but definitely we'll look at like at least half of it, right? So those are the 2 topics. Okay, cool. So we'll start with the first one, which is breakup of caliphate and the rise of sultanates, right? We have discussed in very great detail about Umayyad dynasty and Abbasid dynasty in the last class. Yes, so from 750, Abbasid rulers overthrew the Umayyad dynasty and established their rule, and almost they ruled for around 2 centuries. Fair enough, like a powerful kingdom and all that stuff. So what was happening in the 9th century, right? As 9th century came by, we actually have the state actually became much weaker. The Abbasid state became much weaker, right? Because the main center of the Abbasid state was supposed to be Baghdad. Yeah, Baghdad started losing control over the surrounding provinces. Let's say, for example, this is the Abbasid territory, right? So let's say this is Baghdad. The dot is Baghdad and the whole circle is Abbasid dynasty. So the major rulers will obviously sit in Baghdad, right? Because Baghdad is the capital. They're only able to control and assert their dominance only around the Baghdad region, right? They lost almost the territories which are far away from the capital, right? So that happened, which basically means the Abbasid state is becoming weaker and weaker. Yeah. So, and because of also what was happening, there are different ethnicities living in Abbasid state, right? The previous Arabs were living, and now because Abbasid is a Iranian ethnicity, so Iranians were also living within the same empire. So there were constant conflicts between Arab and Iranian factions as well, because for example, you know, right, like if Arabs are more in number in the army or bureaucracy, then obviously Iranians are revolting. They're like, why are Arabs occupying all the positions? Why are we not being given importance and stuff like that, right? And also like the opposite of that. So because of that, there are so many conflicts arising among the ethnicities. Yeah. Alia, revision of the topic of the Abbasid revolution, a short revision. I mean, we can do that, but we don't really have time. So I'll just wind up in 2 sentences, right? So basically, Umayyads were there, yeah, because of a lot of instability happening, and there was a lot of schism happening within the Islamic Arab state, right? Either between Sunnis and Shias and sects like that. So because of that, Abbasids saw it as an opportunity to take up the Umayyad Empire. In the year 750, in a very far off land, somewhere in Syria, yeah, the troops were formed. basically the point is Abbasids for some reason hated Umayyads, right? Because initially Umayyad ruler promised that they won't collect any taxes from Abbasid people, but then that promise were never fulfilled. Like because of reasons like that, Abbasids never liked Umayyads. In fact, they hated them, right? So because of political instability that was happening within the Umayyad region, it was a great opportunity for Abbasid dynasty to try a revolt, like to revolt against the existing regime, right? So in a far off land in Syria, they somehow convince the people, and they gather all these troops by promising that we will get back the original Islamic philosophy, stuff like that, right? They somehow convinced people, and they gathered a huge army, and then they were successful enough in dethroning the Umayyad king and finally establishing themselves in the 750 AD. Yeah, I know it's very crisp and brief, but I'm hoping that answers your question, Alia. If you want like a very detailed revision, then we can do like one short revision in the next class or something. Oh, okay, you understood. Cool. Okay, that's better. Okay, so because of that, getting back to breakup of caliphate, because of many Arab and Iranian conflicts, the state was becoming much weaker and weaker. Yeah. So what exactly happened in the year 810, right? 810 is again a very, very important year in the Islamic history, especially in the caliphate history. Yeah. What happened? There was a civil war. Like civil war basically broke out. For a war to happen, obviously there needs to be two groups, two parties, right? So the first party are the supporters of Amin. The spelling is here, Amin. The second group are the supporters of Mamun. Yeah. So, but who basically are Amin and Mamun? These are brothers. Yeah. And they are sons of the existing caliph in 810, and whose name was Harun al-Rashid. So the story basically is Harun al-Rashid was the caliph. After his reign, after he almost died, there was some kind of conflict or civil war going on between his two sons, two brothers, right? Amin and Mamun. So in 810 that was happening. So because of that, obviously there is a deepened sense of factionalism, right? And this in turn created a new block order of Turkish slave officers. Yeah. So again, there's a whole history to who are Turkish slaves. Like again, brief intro to who are Turkish slaves. They are hailed from the Turkish land, obviously near the steppe regions. Yeah, in the borders of China and stuff, areas around there, right? So they actually joined Abbasid kingdoms and Umayyad kingdoms as slave soldiers. They are basically nomadic people. So because they did not have any job, they joined in the armies of Abbasid dynasty, right? And they were very, very loyal. Like they are the most loyal soldiers you can ever find. Because of their loyalty, the Abbasid rulers were impressed. Yeah. And slowly these Turkish slave people were promoted in the military order, and from soldiers they became military officers, right? So this is the brief history of Turkish slaves. We'll discuss about them in great detail in the next slides, but for just remember now that Turkish people were slaves, joined as soldiers, later rose to military office ranks, right? So they have a particular name in Persian, obviously. That name is called as Mamluk, right? So Mamluks are nothing but Turkish slaves. So this kind of officer started emerging when there was a civil war going on between Amin and Mamun, right? So again, what happened? Because of that deepened conflicts, there was a conflict between Shiism and Sunni, like Shias and Sunnis. Basically, they're fighting for power. They're like, we are stronger. No, the other group says that No, we are the original followers of Islam, so therefore we are legitimate and we are stronger. There's always constant struggle happening between Shias and Sunnis. That's like one factual point you need to remember. Yeah. Okay, and lastly, also because there was a lot of political instability within the caliphate and within the Abbasid dynasty, I've told you, right, like so many regions are lost. Abbasids are not able to control the whole of the territory. Because of that, so many small kingdoms arose in different parts, right? Let's just look at what those smaller kingdoms are. Like not every kingdom, but like few, 2-3 of them, right? So the first one is Tahirids, right? Tahirids ruled over Khurasan. Khurasan is in present day Iran, right? So Tahirids emerged in Khurasan, and then there are Samanids, Samanid dynasty, which emerged in Transoxiana. Yeah, Transoxiana is also called as Turan back in those days, and this is basically the land between the Oxus River. Yeah. So, and the other small dynasty which also emerged was Tulunids, right? Tulunids again emerged in Egypt and Syria, right? So these are all the small kingdoms that were coming up as the Abbasid state started becoming weaker and weaker. Yeah. Okay. Alia has a request regarding the notes. Yes, Alia, I will be doing that. I have also told you in the previous classes that once I finish explaining the whole of the chapter, towards the end, I'll prepare a notes and put it on the Telegram group, right? So you can access it from there. Cool? Yeah, I get that. This chapter is really vast. It has a lot of concepts and names to remember. So definitely notes is needed as some kind of revision, right? So I'll do that. Don't worry. Okay, I'm hoping everything's clear till there. Cool. So no questions. I'll move forward. So what happened, right? Like slowly territory started fragmenting from the Abbasid rule, and there came a point where Abbasid power was very restricted, like very limited, and to which regions? Especially to central Iraq and western Iran. The central Iraq and western Iran are very small territories, right? Abbasids only had their dominance in these two regions and nowhere else. They have lost all the territories, right? Either to Samanids or Tulunids and dynasties like that. They have lost everything. Yeah. So, sorry. So only central Iraq and western Iran were there. And what happened in 945? In 945, even these two regions were gone. So basically, Abbasid dynasty collapsed because they did not have even a single inch of territory under their control, right? So basically, they collapsed. Even like central Iraq and western Iran was lost in 945 AD, right? How did they lose these? Another minor kingdom, another minor dynasty by name Buyids, right? Spelling is here, it's Buyids, right? This particular Buyid dynasty, and also the thing to remember is they were a Shia clan, like Shia followers, right? And they were from the Caspian region of Iran. In and around the Caspian Sea, they had their original residence, but they found the opportunity to dethrone the Abbasid ruler and establish themselves on the throne, and then they finally captured Baghdad, the capital of Abbasids, in the year 945 AD, right? Cool. So like what did Buyids do? They finally established themselves, and they were very greedy for power in the sense that they started assuming so many titles, like powerful titles, like kings of kings, like great emperors, like emperors of the world and stuff like that, like very powerful meaning those titles have, right? So one of those titles was called as Shehenshah. Yeah, a very familiar word. Everybody must have heard of the word Shehenshah, right? So if literally translated to English, it means king of kings, right? So they preferred to be addressed as Shehenshah, but not as a caliph. They did not want themselves to be addressed as caliph. Instead, they wanted to be addressed as Shehenshahs, right? So that was one of the title that they had. Again, they kept the Abbasid Caliph as the symbolic head of their Sunni subjects. So what does this basically mean? Even though they are Shia followers of Shia clan, like Shia sect, they did not totally abolish the Sunni people. Sunnis still considered the Abbasid Caliph to be their symbolic head, but the original authority vested in the hands of Buaid rulers, right? So Sunni's head, which is the Abbasid Caliph, was just there as some puppet figure. He did not have real power, right? So again, this particular decision of the Buaid rulers not to abolish the caliphate or like the caliph position was a very, very clever decision. Why? It was a clever decision, and we'll see why it is a clever decision, right? Because of the fact that there was another Shia dynasty by name Fatimids, right? The spelling is here, Fatimids, right? It's another Shia dynasty, and they also had ambitions to rule the Islamic world, right? They were very, very powerful. We'll see who Fatimids are in the next slide, but just remember that we are dealing with three players here, right? The first one is Abbasids. Abbasids are Sunnis, yeah. On the other side are Buaids, which is a Shia clan, and also Fatimids, which is another Shia clan, right? So the position of caliph is still there, it is not abolished, right? I'm hoping things are clear till here. It might get a little complicated from next slide, but I'm hoping the basics are clear. Yeah? Okay. Cool. So, who are Fatimids? They also need to have some kind of origin, right? So, we look at who Fatimids are in a little detail. Yeah. So, Fatimids, as I said, belong to the Shia clan, and to be very specific, they belong to the Ismaili subsect of Shia clan. Yeah. And they also claimed that they are the descendants of Prophet Muhammad's daughter Fatima. That is why their dynasty is called as Fatimids, right? They have named themselves after the daughter of Prophet Muhammad, Fatima. Yeah, because they claim themselves to be descendants, right? Because of the fact that they are directly related to Prophet and his daughter, they also told or like claimed that they are the rightful rulers of Islam. They are deriving that legitimacy from Prophet, right? So that was basically Fatimids, and initially the place that they were ruling is in the present day North Africa, right? Their capital, their original base was in North Africa, and later on they conquered Egypt in the year 969 AD, right? I'm talking about Fatimids, right? Fatimids conquered Egypt in 969, and there in the Egyptian region, they basically established the Fatimid Caliphate, their own kingdom. Cool? Okay, so again, after a couple of years, what happened? Initially, Egypt was the capital of Fatimids, right? When they captured Egypt in 969, they made Egypt the capital. But later on, in the next coming years, it was replaced by a new city, which is called as Cairo, right? Cairo, very, very important city in the African continent, right? It's in news even today in 21st century, right? A very, very powerful city. So Cairo became the new capital of Fatimid dynasty a couple of decades later. So now what did they do? There are two rivals, yeah, Fatimids and Buyids. Even though both of them are Shias, still there is conflict, right? Because at the end of the day, even though they belong to the same clan, both of them want power to themselves. They are jealous. They are greedy for power, right? So that is why these two rival dynasties started, even though they are Shias, they started patronizing different administrators, poets, and scholars. Again, the concept of royal patronage is very, very important back in those times, right? They used to sponsor all these different poets and scholars, develop a whole bunch of knowledge, poetry, verses, compilations, and stuff like that, right? So both of them are doing their own work, but definitely there's some kind of tension or some kind of, not exactly war, but like slow tensions, like rivals, right? Basically happening between Buyids and Fatimids. Yeah. Okay. Any questions still here? Okay. Okay, Tushar might have a question, or is that an indication that you understood, Tushar? Yes, Tushar, I'm seeing the chat. What exactly is the question? Okay, you understood everything. Cool. Um, cool then. That makes sense. I'm hoping others also understood. Yeah. You were the one, right, who asked to explain this in great detail in some other class. Yeah. Okay. Nevertheless, just pay attention now. Concepts will be more clearer as we go ahead. Yeah. Cool. So at any point of time you'll have any questions, just keep typing them in the chat box. Don't wait till the end of the class. Okay? Yeah, in class 12. I remember, Tushar. Cool. So now Fatimids were also gaining power. They were rivals to I forget the name. Buyids, right? Yeah, so Buyids and Fatimids are basically two rivals. So leaving the story there, now what is happening between 950 and 1200, right? Almost for a span of 2.5 centuries, what is happening is Islamic society, which was once under the rule of caliphs, like the first four descendants of Prophet, right? Where we've looked at four caliphs, Ali, Uthman, Omar, and all these people. So, under them, and also under Umayyads to a certain extent, the whole of the Arab Peninsula was under one political order. Like there was one king ruling over the whole of Arab Peninsula. But now, if you look from 950 to 1200, all of the Arab Peninsula or the Arab territory was not under a single political order. Neither all of them were talking in the same language. There was Turkish, there was Persian, some other extra languages were coming in and adding as the centuries passed by. So there is no single dominant ruler nor language. Yeah, nor culture, right? Because Turks are there, Iranians are there, Arabs are there, so obviously no single culture, right? But there is one thing which was common among all these people. Yeah, even though the kingdom in itself is highly fragmented and there are different set of rulers, different dynasties of rulers, one factor which kind of united them is a common economic pattern, right? Most of their economy was highly based on agriculture and trade, right? So that is the only common factor. There was a question that Ismailis were the descendants of Fatima. Yes, Gurleen, that's right. Ismailis were the descendants of Fatima. Fatima is again daughter of Prophet Muhammad, right? Belonging to the Shia clan. So Ismailis is a subsect of Shia clan, right? So yeah, that's right. Cool. So now we look at the second point of the slide, right? So unity in the face of political divisions was maintained by the separation between state and society. Yeah, the development of Persian as a language of Islamic high culture. So again, basically the point here is, as I was mentioning, that there are different cultures. Yeah, different people are following different things in life. There is no one factors which was unifying them except for economic patterns. So now, in order to avoid like certain conflicts, yeah, and to live in peace, not to attack each other, like each kingdoms very frequently, there needs to be some peace and harmony, right? So then what did they do? They followed certain measures to maintain that peace and also political unity. The first thing that they did was they separated state and society. Yeah. The second thing that they did was they developed Persian as a language of Islamic high culture. Yeah, as much as possible they have urged the people, like common people, to learn Persian. They have made Persian as the administrative language, or like in some kind of importance was given to Persian, so that there will be some form of unity followed within the kingdom, right? So they did that. And also within the intelligentsia, like intellectual people, like well learned scholars, there was some kind of interaction going on, some kind of dialogue happening to maintain the peace, right? So despite so much chaotic order, some kind of measures were being taken to maintain peace, right? Again, Tushar, to answer your question of domination of Shias and Sunnis, there is no such thing as domination, because it is an open-ended conflict, right? Like even now in 21st century, you see people still fighting. Like some people are Shias, some people are Sunnis, they are still fighting, saying that our language, our sect is better. The other sect obviously denies it and says, no, we are the legitimate followers of Islam. The conflict is like a never ending thing. So sometimes one person will dominate, sometimes the other sect will dominate. The power balance keep changing, right? So there is no one particular domination. Yes, so many tribes, communities and religions, but again, we can't do anything about it. It's a very, very important chapter. So many questions will be asked. So you have to at least read the whole chapter 2-3 times in order to get a better understanding, right? Okay, cool. So the second point is done. Now we look at the third point, where basically the movement of goods and people within these different dynasties that were existing back in the 10th, 11th, 12th centuries, that was free, right? If I'm a scholar, or if I'm an artist, or if I'm a merchant and want to sell my goods in another kingdom, I could freely travel to that kingdom without any permissions or without any restrictions, right? Within the Central Islamic lands, any person can move from his own kingdom to another kingdom to carry out his job or task, right? And obviously, like when the people are moving from one place to another, obviously ideas will be transmitted. Yeah, the kind of lifestyle they are leading will also be transmitted. So that's like a interculture conversation, right? People are actually interacting with each other. That's a good sign. Yeah. So also, like these ideologies, they percolated very deep into the society, like even to the village level. And how do we know that? Because within the village level, so many people started converting to Islam. Initially they were not Muslims. Like the rulers are Muslims, guys, here, but the people living in the region are not Muslims. Only like few of them are. Yeah, hardly like 10%, right? Others are following their own religions, like be it Jews, be it something else, like etc., like local traditions, right? So we start seeing a change where the village level people actually start converting to Islam, and that is how we know that the Islamic ideology is percolating deep into the society, right? Again, the point I was mentioning, right? The Muslim populations during the Umayyad rule, like in the early 7th, 8th centuries, only 10% of the population were Muslims. After that, slowly it started increasing as Abbasids and like Buids, Fatimids, as people started coming in, as dynasties started changing, then there was a conversion to Islam, right? And lastly, the identity of Islam as a religion and cultural system, separate from other religions, becomes much sharper, which made conversion possible and meaningful. Like now there's a particular set of identity or like some kind of sharp demarcations given to Islam. As in like, what is it to be a Muslim? What kind of ideologies am I supposed to follow? What kind of worship am I supposed to do? Or what kind of culture am I supposed to follow? Right? So there are certain ideologies and certain rules that have to be followed by Muslims. Yeah, it kind of demarcated or separated it from other existing traditions, and that is how conversion kind of was easier because there was that kind of sharp divide. Yeah, and there was meaning in conversion. Okay. Yeah, non-Muslims. Yeah, you're right, Tushar. Non-Muslims had to pay tax because the king provides protection in return if they are not Muslims, right? Yeah, whatever the reason might be, it can be because they want to avoid paying tax, or it can be because they truly believe in the Islamic philosophy, like they worship Allah and stuff like that. And like reason can be anything, but the ultimate result is so many conversions did happen. Yeah. Okay. So now we till now we were only looking at two ethnic groups, which are Iranian people, basically Abbasids, and Arab people, right, Umayyads. Now there is a third ethnic group which is entering into the picture and which we will be talking about in detail, yeah, which are the Turks, right? The rise of Turkish Sultanate. Again, introduction was given. And this Turkish Sultanate was started coming up in the 10th and 11th centuries, like late 10th and early 11th centuries. Who are these Turks, right? As I was telling you, Turks were people from Central Asian steppes. Again, steppes, Central Asian steppes, these are all some kind of geographic terms which you must have read in your geography subject, right? So Central Asian steppes is some kinds of grasslands which are present in present day Turkestan. Yeah, and all these Turks are nomadic tribes. They are not settled people. They move from one place to another in search of livelihood, right? And where is Turkestan, right? Again, if you look at the map, which is again very important, please have a look at your maps either in your textbook or just open Google and start searching for world maps, right? So if you locate the Aral Sea, so from the northeast of Aral Sea up until the borders of China, the region between these two places, all of that land is called as Turkestan, right? So these Turks, initially they followed different religions, but once they started coming and settling down in the Central Asian region, they started converting to Islam, right? So Turks are also Islams right now, are Muslims right now. Yeah. So they had n number of skills. Like one of their very important and significant skill is that they are great warriors. Like when I say great, they are like amazing warriors. Like the armies of other kingdoms, they literally were too scared to wage a war with the Turkish warriors because they're very, very powerful, right? They have all these nice strategies, nice techniques to wage a war, and every time almost they used to win. That was how powerful they are. Yeah, so that's their skill. And also they are good riders, right? Like horse riders or like chariot riders and stuff like that. They're very good at that. So again, as I was telling you, these are basically not so rich, like not rich at all. They're basically slaves. Yeah, they are nomadic people. So they entered Abbasid, Samanid and Buyid administrations, like Buyid kingdoms, as slaves, right? Either they are like mere slaves working within the court, yeah, like be cooks or maids or servants and stuff like that. But whoever are capable, like men belonging to the families, they joined the army, right? They served in the Samanid, Abbasids and Buyid armies. So they are basically soldiers, right? So again, they're very, very loyal, as I've mentioned earlier, and because of their loyalty, these rulers were very impressed, right? And then they promoted these Turkish slaves and gave them a high position within the military order. That is how they became military officers, right? They had good military abilities. They had that skill. It's not just because they are loyal, but loyalty plus skill allowed them to become military officers, right? So that was about the Turks, the third ethnic group which was coming in. Okay, any questions till here? Some don't have religion too. Yeah, you're right, Tushar. Some people actually don't have religion. And when they found that Islam is giving them some kind of hope that they would attain salvation after their death and stuff like that, they were obviously attracted to Islam and therefore converted. Cool. But the Turks is an important topic, Tushar. The questions from there will be definitely asked in your examination also. So I highly urge you all to give it a read in your textbook. Yeah. Yeah, so the Turks are good riders. Cool. Great points. Cool. Yes, so now we'll be moving on to one such another small sultanate that was coming up around the same 10th century, 11th century, right? Which is Ghaznavid Sultanate, right? Again, we know Ghaznavid Sultanate because it had a very, very famous ruler called as Muhammad of Ghazni, who invaded India n number of times. Like he was just so determined that he invaded India so many times because he wanted to capture India, right? He used to come, he used to loot, he used to destroy all the temples and then go back. So that is how we know that there's a Ghaznavid Sultanate which kind of existed back in the 10th century, right? So the founder of Ghaznavid Sultanate was Alp-Tegin. His name is Alp-Tegin, right? He established this particular sultanate in the year 961 AD. Yeah, very important. Please remember the date. Yeah. And then after him, when Muhammad of Ghazni, very popular ruler, when he came into the power, when he established himself on the throne, he expanded the territory in every possible direction. He waged so many wars, he finally consolidated the Ghaznavid Sultanate, right? Muhammad Ghazni almost ruled for 32 years. He ruled from 998 to 1030 AD, right? 130 AD. Very, very powerful. Expanded the kingdom in every possible direction. Yeah. So just like the Buyids, Ghaznavids were also a military dynasty, right? As in like their ancestors served in the military. That is how they kind of rose in the society, right? They're also a military dynasty, and they had a very professional army, like a rich army, right? And which ethnic people were a part of this professional army? There were mainly two, right? The first one is Turks, as discussed in the previous points, Turks joined any possible kingdom as soldiers, right? So the first one is Turks, and the second is Indians, right? Surprising, but yes, Indians were a part of Ghaznavid military, Ghaznavid armies, right? And not just like as mere foot soldiers, right? Indians even acquired like great positions within the military organization. For example, we know this one Indian person by name Tilak. Yeah, he was one of the generals of Muhammad. So soldiers, high-ranking officials, military generals, whatever, Indians were a part of the Ghaznavid army. Okay. Okay, Tushar. I mean, again, it's a very broad question. It's a very general question. But see, again, you can't just keep comparing kingdoms, right? Because every kingdom has its own positive points and also negative points. Yeah. So you just can't be like this was the greatest of all, or like the other kingdom was the greatest of all. You just can't say that. Yeah. Even now, like why are you going back so long, right? Even now, you just consider we have so many leaders in the world, be it Trump, Joe Biden, Narendra Modi, like etc. etc. Whoever the leaders are there in the present world, everybody has their own opinions, right? For some people, Modi might be powerful. For some people, Trump might be powerful. For some, Biden might be powerful. So again, it depends on what kind of ideology you're attracted to. Yeah, some might be militarily strong, like Mughals were militarily strong, for example, of or like Ghaznavids, they had a really good guerrilla warfare technique. Like even Shivaji and all those people had good military techniques, guerrilla warfare techniques. So depending on one particular factor, again, it's kind of difficult to say who were powerful, right? Again, I don't have like a really definite answer to it. I would say everyone is powerful in their own ways. At the same time, they also had some kind of demerits. Yeah. Who was rudest and powerful? Uh, Honestly, Tushar, I do not have any such opinion. I just read the facts. I am one kind of person who do not have any opinions on the personalities of people. Yeah. So yeah, I don't have an answer for that. Tanhaji movie, I haven't seen that, Tushar, so I don't know. Okay, cool. We'll quickly move ahead. So, cool. So now we're talking about Ghaznavids, right? For Ghaznavids, their capital or like the main center of power was in Khurasan, present day Iran, right? And Afghanistan, right? Both the regions were like were very valid centers of powers, right? They had a fair share of distribution of power, and the Abbasid caliphs, they were not rivals to Ghaznavids. In fact, they kind of derived a source of legitimacy. I'll explain this point in detail. Basically, what is the fact? The fact is that, as we have already seen, that Ghaznavid people, they were slaves initially, right? They actually served in the Abbasid army. Yeah, they started as soldiers, then they kind of increased their ranks, and that is how Ghaznavid empire was established. So even I was telling you that they were loyal, right? Like even after they became kings, even after they have their own kingdom to themselves, they are still loyal to Abbasids. Even after so much happened, they show their allegiance to Abbasids. They consider Abbasids as some kind of powerful rulers, and they derive their source of legitimacy. But definitely they are not their rivals, right? So this is how Ghaznavids operated. Yeah. Cool. Again, a little bit about Muhammad of Ghazni. He knew for a fact, like he was always conscious of the fact that he's the son of a slave. Yeah, we all know his father was a slave. He was also just a soldier initially. Later on, he became a ruler, right? So he knew that, he was always conscious of that fact, and that is why he always craved for great titles. When you know that you are a low standing person, or when you don't have that societal dominant standing, you always wish for something powerful, right? In the same manner, Muhammad also wished for great titles to be conferred upon him. Yeah. um, and finally he was successful enough, because the then caliph, he actually gave the title of sultan. He conferred the title of sultan on Muhammad. Yeah. Okay, so that was about Muhammad. And the caliph was willing to support the Sunni Ghaznavid as a counterweight to Shia power. Again, back to Shia Sunni conflicts. I've been telling you, right? It has been happening forever. Like since the schism happened, since the split happened, the conflicts have been happening forever in history. Yeah. So now again, what is happening? There was one kind of Shia power that was there. Yeah, Buids and all these people. So in order to counter them, in order to stand against them in opposition, what did the caliph do? He conferred the title of sultan onto Muhammad of Ghazni, because Ghaznavids are Sunnis, right? So that again becomes a Sunni versus Shia conflict. Yeah, again the conflict came up. And then finally, there were a subsect of Turk slaves called as Saljuk Turks. Yeah, Saljuk, anything you want to call it, the pronunciation might change, right? So these are a subsect of Turks. Yeah, and they entered Turan as soldiers. Again, Turks blindly remember, initially in the initial phases they were soldiers, slaves. Only after a couple of centuries they emerged as great kings, right? So even Saljuk Turks, they entered the armies of Samanids and Karakanids. Yeah, again two different other small kingdoms. They joined their armies, right? So just to give you a brief background as to who Karakanids were. Karakanids were actually non-Muslim Turkish people from further east, towards like the eastern region of Turkestan. They were the non-Muslim Turks, right? Okay. Any questions till here, guys? Any confusion as to who Saljuk Turks were, or like any other questions? Sunni, Shia, Muhammad of Ghazni. Any questions? Please put them down in the chat box. Okay, Shrestha is here with us. Hi Shrestha. Thanks for asking. I'm doing good, but like, aren't you a 12th standard student? Today's the class for 11th class, so anyway, so Tushar says no questions. I'm taking that is applicable for everybody. Yeah. Cool then. We'll continue. You just came by mistake. No worries, Shrestha. Anyways, so where were we last? We were talking about Saljuk Turks, right? So again, we'll deal with Saljuk Turks for a bit, at least in this slide. So what did Saljuk Turks do? They established them, like even though they were slaves in the beginning, as time passed by, they established themselves as a very, very powerful group. Yeah, they themselves became a powerful dynasty. And who were their leaders? Their leaders were not actually one person, but in fact two. Yeah, they were brothers by names Tugril Beg and Chagri Beg. Yeah, Tugril Beg, Chagri Beg, two brothers, founders of the Saljuk Turk dynasty. Yeah, remember that point. Okay. Shrestha has a question. Okay, Shrestha, your question is very, very valid. Yeah, I would highly. Okay, UPSC aspirant, and this part of world history is very, very important. So if you want to stay back and listen to it, you can. Again, it's important. Yeah, this history, like European history, like Roman history. Yeah, so all of this is important. Okay, we'll quickly move on. So, two brothers, Tughril Beg, Chagri Beg, founders of the dynasty, Saljuk Turks dynasty. So, once Muhammad Ghajni died, yeah, he obviously died in 130 AD or something. So, once he died, again there was a lot of political instability that can be seen in the Ghaznavid dynasty. Civil wars, people have been fighting, everybody is greedy for power. Obviously people were like, we want the power, we want the power. Yeah, so there's a lot of political instability, and Saljuk Turks actually took advantage of this, and then they conquered Khorasan in 1037 AD, like 1037 AD. They actually conquered Khorasan. They were successful in their attempt, and they made a particular region called Nishapur as their first capital. Right? Nishapur is again important. Important, right? They might ask, what is the capital of Saljuks? Then the answer is Nishapur. Right? So again, Nishapur also has another significance. The first significance is obviously it is the capital for Saljuks. The second thing is it is an important Perso-Islamic center of learning. A religious center, right? Like a scholarly center. It's famous for that. Yeah. So after conquering Khorasan, what did Saljuks do? They turned towards Western Persia and Iraq. Right? So they were very, very powerful, that wherever they went and attacked, almost they were successful, mostly. Yeah, they went to Western Persia, they conquered Western Persia. They went to Iraq, which was that point of time ruled by the Buyids. They conquered Iraq, right? And this conquering of Iraq happened in 1055. Yeah, and because of this, what happened? Saljuks were basically Sunnis. Yeah, Turks were basically Sunnis. And before that, when Buyids were ruling over Iran, Buyids were Shias, right? So now Buyids, who were Shias, lost the war to Saljuks, who were Sunnis. So now what happened? In Baghdad, the Sunni rule is established again, right? So Sunnis basically overthrew Shias. Cool, so that's the point. Okay. Tushar, like, you want my views on what exactly? Related to like which stream is easier? If that is your question, I wouldn't say arts is easier when compared to commerce and science. In fact, I have a very strong opinion on this. Arts is not easier. Just don't be like, because arts is easier, I'm taking it. Don't do that. Because once you go further, only if you have interest you can study arts. Otherwise, it will be very, very boring. Yeah? Just take whatever you're interested in, right? Not because something is easier or difficult. Just choose something in life which you find very interesting, right? You know for a fact that even if you study that particular subject for 3 or 5 or 7 years, you won't be bored of it. Choose such subjects, right? That's the only advice I have for you. Cool. We were talking about the establishment of Sunni rule, right? Sunni rule was re-established in Baghdad, and therefore now the then caliph, who was Al-Qaim, right? He conferred on Tughril Beg the title of Sultan. Again, just like how Muhammad of Ghajni got the title of Sultan from the then caliph, Now Tughril Beg also got the title of Sultan from Al-Qaim, who was the Caliph in 1055, right? So again, even though the real power is between the both hands, Tughril and Chagri Beg, both the brothers, but for namesake, at least only one person has to be in the power because it's a monarchy, right? So that is why the title was conferred onto Tughril Beg. Cool. So now what we're dealing with here is two Seljuk brothers, very powerful, established themselves, even got the title. Now they are actually ruling whatever territories that they have conquered according to the tribal notions, because they are tribal people. They had a nomadic way of living. These are all Turks, right? They had their own way of rule which they have experienced under some other king when they were kids, right? They have implemented that kind of tribal rules and laws in the newly captured territories, right? And then they were ruling, they were successful. Once Tughril died, obviously people will die, right? How much ever powerful they are. So Tughril died one day, and then he was succeeded by his nephew, like his brother's son, whose name was Alp Arsalan. Yeah. During Alp Arsalan's reign, this particular Seljuk empire even expanded further. Yeah, not just to Iran, not just Egypt and all, but now they have also conquered another new region called as Anatolia, which is in modern day Turkey. Yeah, Anatolia, again a very powerful city. It's in modern day Turkey, captured by Alp Arslan and merged into the Seljuk kingdom, right? So that was the end of again they ruled for a couple of years. They were powerful and then finally they declined. Yeah. So now what was happening between the 11th and 13th centuries is that there are a lot of conflicts that were happening, not among the Muslims, like not Sunni Shia conflicts, but between the Arab states and European Christians. If you look at the world map again, if you take Europe as a whole, majority of the western part of the European nations were dominated by Christians, Byzantine Empire and empires like that. But towards the eastern part of the European territory, mostly the Arab states were ruling, like Islam dominated, right? So from 11th to 13th, these two parties started fighting between each other. Like there was so many conflicts going on, right? Okay, so conflicts were happening for almost 2 centuries, and by the end of 13th century, the Muslim world found itself on the verge of a great disaster because they have been continuously losing wars to Christians, and they were almost boiled down to a stage where, like if they lose the next war, the Muslim world is dead. Like it's a great disaster, right? They were in such a position. Yeah. And also another factor which was adding to their threat is towards their weakening of the state is because of the fact that there are so many threats from Mongols, right? Again, Mongols, we will learn in great detail about Mongols in probably the next chapters or like in 12th standard. Yeah, Mongols, Genghis Khan, how the Mughals came into the picture and all that stuff. But for now, just remember that Mongols were very powerful. They were also nomadic populations from the steppe areas, right? 2 points. Mongols, very powerful nomadic populations. Yeah. So that was happening towards the end of the 13th century. Okay, so in order to answer like Tushar's point earlier, uh, I honestly think it's because you're putting in a lot of effort, Tushar. Yeah, because only if you work hard you're gonna get results, good results, right? So just keep putting in a lot of effort. You will definitely have good results towards the end. Yeah. Okay. I'm assuming there are no questions still here because there are none asked in the chat box. So I'll quickly move forward. So now you basically realize, right, like how caliphate came to an end, and then finally sultanates started emerging, like different sultanates. We have come across almost like 7, 8 different sultanates, right? Buids, again, Tulunids, Samanids, like n number of small sultanates. They were coming up, and then there was a slow falling down of the caliphate once the Abbasids started losing their power. So that was about the next the sub theme, which is the breakup of the caliphate and the rise of sultanates. Now from there we'll be moving on to the next subtopic, which is called the Crusades. Yeah. Again, why is it called Crusades? You will get to know about it in the last slide for today's class. But let's just look at what was happening during the medieval Islamic societies, right? Like 13th, 14th centuries. So in the medieval Islamic societies, Christians, like how did Islam or how did Muslim people look at Christians, right? Christians were often looked at as people of the book. They were regarded as the people of the book, and in Persian language, it's called as Ahl al-Kitab. Yeah, why is that so? Because they were the only religious group during that time who had a holy book, Bible, right? Bible was very prominent. Whatever was written in the Bible was the ultimate law. Agreed, like Islam people also had a holy book, Quran, but other than these two religions, whatever other religions were there in the central Islamic lands, none of them had a religious book, like none. Yeah, so that is why Christians were often regarded as the people of the book. And Christians were like, they had a good name in the eyes of Muslims. They were often granted like access to come into the Muslim states, like carry on their trade, and also like for pilgrimages, right? Because for Christians, the holy place is Jerusalem, the birth of Jesus. And that particular Jerusalem is under the Muslim rule, like under the Islamic states. So whenever Christians wanted to come to Jerusalem and worship Jesus, they were allowed to do so. Yeah. So for trade purposes, for pilgrim purposes, for traveling purposes, whatever it is, Christians were given free access to come and visit, to come into the Islamic territories. So again, as I was telling you, Palestine was also an important place for Christians. Palestine was also under Islamic territory. So to visit all these places, they were allowed to come and do the religious offerings. Yeah. Again, Jerusalem history is given. Jerusalem, again, only till the mid 7th century, Jerusalem was actually under the Christian rule, under the Byzantine Empire. But in this mid 7th century itself, Arabs fought a war with Byzantine Empire, and then they defeated the Byzantine Empire. That is how Jerusalem came under the ambit of Arabs, right? So it's basically considered as a place where, like Jesus was crucified and then finally resurrected. So that is the significance of Jerusalem. And this was an important factor in the formation of the image of Muslims in Christian Europe, obviously, right? Okay. No, Tushar, it's not any of the three things you mentioned regarding the crusade. Wait till the end. It'll kind of become easier for you to understand what crusade is if you listen to the whole of the background, right? So I'll tell you what crusade is, just hold on. But it's not any of the three you mentioned. Yeah. So what was happening, right? Like their place, like their holy place, which is Jerusalem, Palestine, these are all like important places for Christians. And the fact that they are under Muslim rule, obviously Christians did not like it. Yeah, that's an obvious fact, right? So that is how there was some kind of hatredness which was growing between Muslims and Christians, and it was becoming more explicit almost in the 11th century. Right from 7th century, that kind of hatredness was there, but in the 11th century, it kind of started getting consolidated, right? So there are other kinds of communities which were living in those regions. For example, Normans, Hungarians, and Slavs. Yeah, all of these were also having their own traditions initially, but later on, as centuries passed by, they converted to Christianity. Yeah. So now the major enemies of Christian people, or like the Byzantine Empire, are none other than Muslims only. The only enemy is Muslims. Arab state. Yeah. And also, like, there were a lot of changes which were happening in social and economic organizations, especially in the Western Europe in the 11th century, right? Because of these social and economic changes, it kind of deepened the hostility between Christians and Islamic world. And also, lastly, the clergy and the warrior class, very high standing people in the society, they tried to establish some kind of political stability within the Byzantine Empire, the Christian ruled empire. Yeah. Along with political stability, they were also thriving for economic growth based on agriculture and trade. They were like, let's not loot anymore. Let's not, like, raid the neighboring kingdoms, loot their wealth, destroy them, kill them, and come back. Let's not do that. Let's maintain some kind of peace. Yeah, let's not fight amongst ourselves. And in fact, how are we going to generate revenue? We are going to do it by carrying out agriculture and trade. Right? So that was some kind of economic transition that was happening in the 11th century Western Europe. Okay. Again, that's a personal view, Tushar. I wouldn't like to comment on that. Cool, but you're entitled to have your own views. That's fair enough. Cool. So the next point basically is, again, as I was telling, whenever internal conflicts were going on in the Byzantine Empire, they made it a point that all the internal conflicts should stop. People within the Byzantine Empire should not fight. We as Christians should live together. Yeah, we should stop plundering other regions and instead focus on our own agriculture and trade and generate revenue. Yeah, in order to stop such violence, stop internal conflicts, the rulers of Christian Empire came up with a new treaty, or like new movement, by the name of Peace of God movement. Right? Peace of God movement. Important, please remember. Yeah. When it comes to Peace of God movement, what was happening is, according to this movement, all military violence is definitely not possible. Like, it's completely forbidden inside particular areas. What areas are these? These are basically areas surrounding the places of worship, where basically there are churches, right? These are sacred places, and therefore any kind of violence is prohibited here. And especially during the times of Christmas or Good Friday, like some special dates which the Christian calendar will have, especially during these dates, any kind of violence is definitely prohibited. And against the churchmen and common people who do not have any sort of arms or ammunitions like military property, you are not supposed to go and conduct violence there. These are some of the kinds of rules established as a part of the Peace of God movement, right? So now what happened? Along with the above mentioned provisions that you should not carry out violence in so and so particular areas against so and so particular people, there was also another provision which states that all these military actions or military violence should be diverted towards something else. What is that something else? It should be diverted towards the enemies of God. For them, who are the enemies of God? Whoever are not Christians, right? all non-Christians are definitely enemies of God if you look from the Christian point of view. So in that sense, whoever are infidels, basically non-believers of Jesus or Joseph, they against them you can carry out military violence, and it reached such a point that it's not just permitted to carry on violence with the non-Christians, but it's also commendable, right? Like people started praising the soldiers who went against Muslims. They were like, wow, that's nice, like you did a great job by going against Muslims. They were kind of praised. Yeah. So that was what was happening in the 13th century, 11th to 13th century Christian kingdoms. Or their own country mata. Okay. Cool. So now, this slide, right? So finally, what happened is now going back to the Seljuk Sultans, like Seljuk Turks, right? Seljuk Turks, their capital majorly was there, but it started kind of disintegrating after 1092, especially when its last ruler Malik Shah died. Malik Shah again was a very powerful ruler, but once he died, there was no other powerful kingdom to inherit the kingdom, and therefore this empire started disintegrating, right? There was a lot of political instability. Now, what did the Byzantine Empire do? They obviously took this as an opportunity, they took the advantage of it, and the then emperor by name Alexius I, yeah, he took it as an opportunity to go and invade Asia and northern Syria. Basically, the parts ruled by the Seljuk Turks. Yeah, he started considering to revolt against those kingdoms, right? And then added to the king of Byzantine Empire, who was Alexius II, there was another figure called as Pope. Again, Pope, we all know, central figure of Christian community. And that time, the Pope was Urban II. Yeah, his name is Urban II, right? So he also wanted to go and attack Seljuk Turks because he wanted to establish the Christian rule in Baghdad as well, right? So Alexius I, Urban II, they came together and they tried to attack these people, right? Again, in 1095, what happened? The Pope joined the Byzantine Empire. As I was telling you, there was a merge, yeah, and in the name of God. They're not telling that we want to conquer the kingdom because we are greedy for power. They're not saying that. They were like, we as Christians, I as a Pope, it is my responsibility to restore Christianity in that region because that land was initially ours. Jerusalem is ours. That is why I have the legal right to go wage a war against them and also to establish the Christian empire. Right? So that was what Pope and Byzantine ruler Alexius I were doing. Yeah. So there was a series of wars that were happening between 1095 and 1291. Yeah, for almost 2 centuries. Western European Christians, which is Byzantine Empire plus Pope, yeah, these both are on one side, and the other side is the Muslim rulers, right? They started fighting n number of wars, like so many wars, so many battles were fought. Where were they especially fought? At a particular place called the Levant, right, which is the coastal plain of Eastern Mediterranean region. That's like a border, right? Border for Muslims and Christians rule. So they started fighting wars at the border, right? So in order to answer Tushar's question now as to what are crusades, these exactly are crusades. These wars which were happening from 1095 to 1291, these wars are later designated as crusades. Yeah? Okay, now you understand the point, Tushar, like as to what crusades are. These are basically the wars fought between European Christians and Muslim Empire from 1095 to 1291 AD. Yeah, so those are crusades. Uh, yeah, I mean, like, this chapter is kind of confusing. I get it because there are a lot of names involved, but there's nothing we can do about it. It's really, really important in terms of examination point of view. So I highly urge y'all to go through the videos again and again, like, take notes whenever possible. Yeah, keep reading the textbook whenever you have time. Look at the world maps on Google. Yeah, again, few tips as to how you can prepare for this chapter, right? But don't leave this out. You're definitely going to fail if you leave this chapter out because so many questions are going to be asked from this chapter. Yeah, so please read it. Exactly, Ayushi has the point there. Ayushi says crusades are holy wars which are fought between Christians and Muslims for holy land of Jerusalem. Perfect, Ayushi, perfect point. I will rewind your video after live. Yeah, you can do that if you kind of missed out on some point. Uh, okay, cool. So that brings us to the end of the class. By defining what crusades are, we are closing today's chapter, but the crusades part is still not over. We look at it in Friday's class, not Friday, sorry, Saturday's class. Yeah. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, just put them down in the chat box. I will answer them very, very quickly. But in the meanwhile, I'll just wind this up, right? Because we're already running out of time. So regarding the plus and iconic subscriptions I've mentioned to you all earlier, there's a special offer going on right now till the end of this month. Yeah. Sorry, till 4th of October. Sorry. So if you use the code which is TUM10, you'll get a 10% off anyways. But if you subscribe to these during this 4 days, you'll get an extra 5% off on a 9-month subscription and an extra 10% off on a 12-month subscription. So I highly urge you all to go grab yours before the offer ends. And yeah, thank you so much for coming in, tuning in every day at 6 p.m. I highly appreciate it, guys. Also, like, if you like the content of these videos, please do like it as soon as the live stream ends, and subscribe to the channel Unacademy and also Scholars in particular, and comment down below with any questions you might have. Yeah, thank you so much. But in the meanwhile, I'll just answer a couple of your questions. 38 out of 40. That's a very good score, Ayushi. Congratulations. Keep going well. Okay, that's great. Cool then. Any further questions, please stay back and ask. But otherwise, you'll are free to leave. The class is over. I'll see you guys again on Saturday. Yeah, at 6 p.m. Cool? We'll discuss this chapter in a very greater detail. Probably after Crusades, we have economy, mainly focusing on agriculture and urbanization, and also commerce, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So we'll talk about that in next class on Saturday. I'll see you then. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Now, I'll just hang around for a couple of seconds in case any of y'all have questions. But if not, y'all can leave, guys. Thank you. Have a good evening and also have a good day tomorrow. But be safe and start studying. Your exams are coming up, right? So, yeah. Okay, Tushar. Fair point. You can keep asking questions whenever we have classes, right? So that's next Saturday, right? Okay, Ayushi has her birthday coming up. Cool. Advance happy birthday, Ayushi. Okay, cool. So, no questions related to the subject. So, therefore, I'll be ending the live stream. So, again, I'll see you guys on Saturday. Till then, be safe and have a good day tomorrow. Yeah? Thank you.